Far out in the vast Atlantic Ocean, about 570 kilometers off the coast of West Africa, lies a special group of islands. This is Cape Verde, an archipelago born from fire and sea. Millions of years ago, powerful volcanoes erupted from the deep ocean floor. Hot lava cooled and hardened, slowly building up until it broke through the water's surface. This process created 10 main islands and several smaller islets. Each island has its own unique shape and character. Some are mountainous and rugged, with tall peaks that touch the clouds. Others are flatter and drier, with wide, sandy beaches that meet the turquoise water. The islands are a testament to the raw power of nature, standing as lonely sentinels in the middle of the great ocean. The islands are divided into two groups. The Barlavento, or Windward Islands, are in the north. These include Santo Antão, São Vicente, Santa Lucia, São Nicolau, Sal, and Boa Vista. They face the strong trade winds that blow from the northeast. The Sotavento, or Leeward Islands, are in the south. These are Maio, Santiago, Fogo, and Brava. They are more sheltered from the wind. The island of Fogo is home to the highest peak, Pico do Fogo, which is an active volcano. It reminds everyone of the fiery origins of this land. The climate is warm and dry for most of the year, with very little rain, making life a constant challenge for those who would later call this place home. Before humans ever set foot here, these islands were a world of their own. They were a quiet sanctuary for plants and animals that had found their way across the ocean. Unique birds nested in the rocky cliffs, and special types of lizards scurried over the volcanic soil. The sea around the islands was full of life, with fish, turtles, and whales swimming in the clear waters. For countless centuries, the only sounds were the crash of the waves against the shore, the cry of seabirds, and the whistle of the wind. This was a pristine, untouched paradise, a blank slate waiting for history to be written upon its shores, a story that would begin with the arrival of ships from a distant land. The geographic location of Cape Verde would become its destiny. Positioned strategically in the Atlantic, it was a perfect stopping point for ships sailing between Europe, Africa, and the Americas. This location would shape its entire history, turning these isolated volcanic rocks into a bustling crossroads of people, cultures, and trade. The very winds and currents that carried birds and seeds to its shores would one day carry sailors and explorers. The story of Cape Verde is not just about the land itself, but about its relationship with the vast ocean that surrounds it and the people who dared to cross it, forever changing the destiny of this empty archipelago. For thousands of years, the Cape Verde Islands were completely empty. There were no people living there, no villages, and no signs that anyone had ever been there. The islands were quiet, known only by the birds flying above, and the sea creatures in the water around them. African fishermen on the mainland might have seen the islands far away on a very clear day, but there's no proof that anyone ever made a home there. The strong ocean currents and how far they were from the coast made the trip hard and risky. The islands were a secret kept by the Atlantic Ocean, patiently waiting to be found by the rest of the world. That moment happened in the 1400s, a time when people were exploring a lot. Portuguese sailors, wanting to find new ways to trade and new things, were sailing further down the African coast than ever before. Around the year 1460, explorers working for the King of Portugal, like Alvise Caramosto and Diogo Gomes, found these empty islands by chance. They were surprised to see land with no people. They claimed the islands for Portugal and named them Cabo Verde, which means Green Cape, after a green piece of land on the African coast nearby. This discovery started a new chapter for the islands, one that would be shaped by people. The Portuguese saw a lot of good things about these empty islands. Their location was perfect. Ships going to and from Africa and later the Americas would need a place to stop for fresh water, food, and to fix things. The King of Portugal decided to build a permanent town. In 1462, the first settlers arrived on the island of Santiago. They started a town called Ribeira Grande, which is now known as Cidade Velha. This became the first European city built in a warm tropical area. The settlers faced many problems. The land was dry and hard to farm, and they had to learn how to live in this new and strange place. The first settlers were a mix of Portuguese people. They included Media Group of diverse settlers in period costume, reenactment of priests, nobles, merchants, and prisoners arriving together at distribute underscore equally. Rich people who were given land, priests who came to share Christianity, business people looking for new chances, and also criminals who were sent to the islands as a punishment. They brought plants, animals, and building ideas from Europe. They tried to grow crops like wheat and grapes, but the dry weather made it very hard. They soon realized that to make the islands useful and long-lasting, they would need many more workers. This need for workers would lead to the darkest and most life-changing time in Cape Verde's history, forever changing who lived there and their culture. The Portuguese settlement in Cape Verde quickly became a main spot for a new and terrible business, the transatlantic slave trade. To work the land and build the new colony, the Portuguese started bringing enslaved people from the West African coast. Men and women were captured from their homes in places like Guinea, Senegal, and Sierra Leone and forcefully brought to the islands. They arrived in chains. Their lives changed forever. In Cape Verde, they were made to work on big farms, growing crops like sugarcane and cotton. They were also used as workers in the towns, building churches, forts, and homes for the Portuguese settlers. On the islands of Santiago and Fogo, a new society started to form, one that was very different from others. It was a place where European settlers and enslaved Africans lived very close to each other. This close contact, even though it came from a system of cruel unfairness, led to people and cultures mixing. Relationships, some forced and some by choice, happened between Portuguese men and African women. Their children were the first, or Creoles. They were born in Cape Verde and didn't completely belong to Europe or Africa. They were a new group of people, with a special identity made from two very different worlds coming together. This process of mixing, called, became the basis of Cape Verdean society. This new Creole population grew over hundreds of years. They acted as a bridge between the European rulers and the African slaves. Some were given their freedom, while others were born free. They often worked as managers, soldiers, traders, or sailors. They spoke a new language, Cape Verdean Creole, or which mixed Portuguese words with African grammar and how sentences are put together. This language became the true main language of the islands, a strong symbol of the new culture that was appearing. It was a language born from everyday talks, a useful tool for talking between people who didn't share a past, but were building a future together. Making this Creole society was a complicated process. It was built on unfairness and injustice, but it also created a strong and special culture. The people of Cape Verde learned to deal with the tough realities of their world. They took parts from both their European and African backgrounds and put them together to make something completely new. This mixing wasn't just in their language or how they looked, but in every part of their lives. You could see it in their beliefs, their traditions, their music, and their food. The story of Cape Verde became the story of these new Creole people, showing how humans can adapt and create who they are, even when things are very hard. Daily life in early Cape Verde was a constant back and forth between two worlds. The customs that grew here were a beautiful and complex mix of European and African ideas. Religious practices are a great example of this blend. While the official religion was Roman Catholicism, brought by the Portuguese, many African spiritual beliefs were quietly mixed in. Festivals for saints' days, for example, became huge community events. They were celebrated with Catholic church services and parades, but also with African-inspired music, drumming, and dancing that went on late into the night. These celebrations were a way for everyone to come together and show off their special dual heritage. The food of Cape Verde, or its cooking style, tells the same story of cultures coming together. The national dish is a perfect example of this mix. It's a stew cooked slowly with corn, beans, and different vegetables. Depending on what's around, it can also have fish or different kinds of meat like pork or sausage. The ingredients show the history of the islands. Corn came from the Americas, beans were a main food, and the ways of slow cooking in one pot come from African cooking traditions. Other popular dishes also show this mix, using local seafood and combining it with ingredients and cooking styles from Portugal and Africa, making flavors that are only found in Cape Verde. Music became the very heart of the Cape Verdean people. It was a way to show joy, sadness, and that deep feeling of missing something or someone far away, known as. This feeling, a kind of longing for something or someone not here, is a main idea in Cape Verdean culture. The most famous type of music is. It's a slow, sad, and beautiful style of music, often played with a guitar, a violin, and a cavaquinho, which is a small four-stringed guitar. The words of Morna songs often talk about love, loss, and the pain of leaving home, which was a common experience for many Cape Verdeans who had to leave their dry islands to find work. It's the music of people separated by the sea. Another important music style is, unlike the sad Morna, Funana is fast, lively, and driven by an accordion with strong African rhythms. It was originally the music of poor people in the countryside and was once stopped by the people in charge because of its lively dance style and its words that often spoke against social problems. Today, both Morna and Funana are celebrated as key parts of the country's identity. They show the two sides of the Cape Verdean spirit, the thoughtful and nostalgic soul, and the strong and joyful heart. This music is more than just fun. It's a living history, carrying the stories and feelings of the people through many generations. For nearly 4 centuries, the economy and society of Cape Verde were dominated by the transatlantic slave trade. The island's location made them an ideal warehouse, or for human beings. Ships arrived from the African coast, carrying captured men, women, and children. In Cape Verde, these people were held, sorted, and processed before being forced onto other ships bound for the brutal plantations of Brazil, the Caribbean, and North America. The main slave market was in Ribeira Grande, now called Cidade Velha, and its stone-paved streets and ruins still bear silent witness to this horrific trade. The wealth of the early colony was built directly on the suffering of millions. The slave trade brought profound and lasting changes to the islands. It not only created the Creole population, but also shaped the social structure in a very rigid way. At the top were the white Portuguese landowners, officials, and merchants. In the middle was the growing Creole population, who had more rights and opportunities than enslaved Africans, but were still considered inferior to the Europeans. At the very bottom were the enslaved people, who were treated as property with no rights at all. This strict hierarchy created deep social divisions that would last for generations, even long after the slave trade itself had ended. The scars of this system are part of the nation's complex identity. The economy of Cape Verde was entirely dependent on this trade. When other European powers began to compete with Portugal, and when the abolitionist movement gained strength in the 19th century, the island's economy began to decline. The official end of the slave trade in the 1800s was a major blow. Without the constant flow of human cargo, the port cities lost their main source of income. The islands, with their dry climate and poor soil, struggled to find new economic activities. The land could not support the growing population, leading to cycles of drought, famine, and poverty that would plague Cape Verde for many years to come. These economic hardships forced many Cape Verdeans to leave their homeland. This began a long history of emigration that continues to this day. Cape Verdeans became sailors on whaling ships, migrant workers on plantations in São Tomé and Príncipe, and immigrants seeking a better life in America and Europe. This diaspora, or scattering of people, became a key part of the Cape Verdean experience. Even though they left their islands, they carried their culture, their music, and their deep sense of with them. The legacy of the slave trade was not just one of sorrow and economic ruin, but also one of resilience, migration, and the creation of a global Cape Verdean community. The decline of the slave trade and the subsequent economic hardship created a whole new reality for Cape Verde. The 19th and 20th centuries were marked by terrible periods of drought and famine. The Portuguese colonial administration, honestly, did very little to help the struggling population. This neglect and suffering planted the seeds of a new consciousness among Cape Verdeans. A sense of shared identity and a desire for change began to grow. Educated Creoles started to question the colonial system and dream of a future where they could control their own destiny. They felt a stronger connection to their African roots and to other colonized people who were also fighting for freedom. A key figure in this awakening was Amilcar Cabral. He was born in Guinea-Bissau to Cape Verdean parents and became a brilliant thinker, writer, and revolutionary leader. Cabral argued that Cape Verde and Guinea-Bissau, another Portuguese colony on the mainland, shared a common struggle against colonialism. He believed that their liberation was connected. In 1956, he co-founded the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde, or PIGC. The party's goal was to achieve independence for both territories through political organization and, if necessary, armed struggle. Cabral's ideas inspired a generation of freedom fighters. The PIGC began a long and difficult armed conflict against the Portuguese colonial army in Guinea-Bissau. While the fighting did not happen on Cape Verdean soil, many Cape Verdeans joined the struggle, fighting in the forests of Guinea. The war was brutal and lasted for over a decade. Amilcar Cabral became an internationally respected leader, but he was assassinated in 1973, just before his dream of independence could be realized. His death was a terrible blow, but it did not stop the movement he had built. His brother, Luis Cabral, took over the leadership of the party, and the fight for freedom continued with even greater resolve. The final push for independence came from an unexpected place, Portugal itself. In April 1974, a military coup in Portugal, known as the Carnation Revolution, overthrew the long-standing dictatorship. The new democratic government in Portugal wanted to end its colonial wars. This opened the door for peaceful negotiations with the PIGC. After years of struggle, sacrifice, and waiting, the moment had finally arrived. The PIGC negotiated the terms of independence, and on July 5, 1975, Cape Verde officially became a sovereign nation. It was a day of immense joy and celebration, marking the end of 500 years of colonial rule and the beginning of a new era of self-determination. After achieving independence in 1975, Cape Verde faced enormous challenges. The country was poor, had few natural resources, and was still suffering from the effects of recent droughts. The new government, led by the PIGC, established a one-party state with close ties to Guinea-Bissau. The initial plan was to unite the two nations, just as Amilcar Cabral had envisioned. However, the cultural and political differences between the island nation and the mainland country were significant. A coup in Guinea-Bissau in 1980 ended the plan for unification. Cape Verde then focused on building its own future as a separate and independent republic, charting its own course in the world. A major turning point for Cape Verde came in the early 1990s. The country peacefully transitioned from a one-party system to a multi-party democracy. This successful and stable transition was, honestly, pretty remarkable in a region often marked by political instability. Cape Verde earned a reputation as a model of democracy and good governance in Africa. This political stability became one of the nation's greatest assets. It allowed the government to focus on economic development, social programs, and building international relationships. The country invested heavily in education and health, leading to significant improvements in the quality of life for its citizens. Today, Cape Verde's economy is based primarily on services, especially tourism. The beautiful sandy beaches of Sal and Boa Vista, combined with the year-round warm climate, attract visitors from all over Europe. Tourism provides jobs and is a major source of foreign income. Another vital part of the economy is remittances. These are the funds sent home by the large Cape Verdean diaspora living abroad in countries like the United States, Portugal, and France. This global community remains deeply connected to their homeland, and their financial support is crucial for many families and for the national economy as a whole. Despite its progress, Cape Verde still faces challenges. Water scarcity remains a constant issue due to the dry climate. The country is also dependent on imported food and fuel, which makes it vulnerable to global price changes. However, the Cape Verdean people are known for their resilience and optimism, a spirit they call. This word describes a unique blend of hospitality, friendliness, and easygoing charm that is central to the national character. It is this spirit that makes the island special, welcoming visitors and facing the future with a sense of hope and determination, proud of their hard-won independence and their unique identity. The culture of modern Cape Verde is a lively way of showing its history and, honestly, its heart. Music, more than anything else, is like the heartbeat of the country. It's everywhere, coming out of homes, bars, and taxis. The most famous music from here is made known around the world by the amazing singer Cesaria Evora. People called her the Barefoot Diva. Evora sang with a voice full of feeling, capturing the deep emotion of that sweet and sad longing for home, for a lost love, for a past that can't ever come back. Morna is like the song that plays for Cape Verdeans living in other countries. A beautiful, sad way of showing how people spread out by history are still connected in spirit. But different from the gentle sadness of Morna, there's the energetic beat of. This fast-paced music, with its strong accordion and driving rhythm, is for dancing. It started in the countryside of Santiago Island and was once not liked by the Portuguese rulers. After Cape Verde became independent, Funana was celebrated as a sign of African strength and national pride. Its songs often tell stories of everyday life, talk about society, and celebrate things. Together, Morna and Funana show the two main feelings of Cape Verde, the quiet thinking of the soul and the exciting joy of life. This mix really shows what the country is like. Besides music, Cape Verdean culture is full of great books and art. Writers like Baltasar Lopes da Silva and Eugenio Tavares wrote about being Creole, about dry weather, and about people moving away in their books and poems. Their work helped create a special national literature that gave a voice to the struggles and hopes of the people. Artists also get ideas from the island's unique landscapes and history, using bright colors to show scenes from daily life, the sea, and the volcano mountains. The culture is alive and always changing, but it stays deeply connected to its roots in Africa and Europe. What makes the island special is also their people and their way of life called. This is more than just being friendly. It's a relaxed, open, and kind way of living. It's the smile from someone you don't know, being willing to share food and calmly accepting life's challenges. This spirit, along with the amazing natural beauty of the islands, from the green valleys of Santo Antão to the desert-like sand dunes of Boa Vista, is what makes Cape Verde so special. It's a place where history isn't just in books, but in the music, the language, the food, and the warm welcome of its people. It's a reminder of a culture that grew strong even when it was alone and faced tough times. The story of Cape Verde is a remarkable journey through time. It begins with empty volcanic islands, isolated in the vastness of the Atlantic Ocean. The arrival of the Portuguese in the 15th century marked the start of a new human history. These islands, once silent, became a central stage for some of the most dramatic events of the modern world. They were transformed from an untouched wilderness into a strategic outpost of a European empire. This initial settlement set the stage for a complex and often painful history, but also for the creation of something entirely new and unique in the world. The archipelago became a crucible where Europe and Africa met. This was not a meeting of equals, but one born from the brutal system of the transatlantic slave trade. Yet, out of this great tragedy, a new people and a new culture were born. The Cape Verdean Creole identity, forged in the crucible of colonialism and slavery, is a powerful testament to human resilience. The blending of languages, beliefs, music, and traditions created a society with a distinct soul. This Creole heritage is the bedrock of the nation, a source of pride and a defining characteristic of its people, shaping their view of themselves and their place in the world. The path from a Creole colony to an independent nation was long and arduous. It was a struggle defined by economic hardship, devastating famines, and the fight for freedom against colonial rule. The leadership of figures like Amilcar Cabral and the collective will of the people eventually led to independence in 1975. Since then, Cape Verde has distinguished itself as a stable democracy, a beacon of hope and good governance in Africa. It has overcome immense challenges to build a future for its citizens, turning its small size and limited resources into a story of success and progress, guided by the spirit of. Today, Cape Verde stands as a proud and sovereign nation, its identity deeply rooted in its diverse heritage. Its journey is a powerful lesson in how history, no matter how difficult, shapes the present. The legacy of the islands is carried in the mournful notes of in the joyful rhythm of, in the savory taste of, and in the warm hearts of its people. From volcanic origins to a global diaspora, The story of Cape Verde is one of survival, fusion, and the creation of a unique and enduring culture. It is a small country with a very big soul, a true jewel of the Atlantic.